Right now, states across the nation are facing an increasingly divided political reality as both major parties pursue changes to local congressional maps. This week, Republicans in North Carolina passed a new map, likely giving the party one more seat over Democrats, marking the first swing state so far to be redistricted ahead of next year's midterms. And joining us now is Galen Druke, political analyst and host of the GD Politics podcast. Welcome, Galen. Good to see you again. So as of today, you have North Carolina, Texas, and Missouri. They've all adopted new maps. But as you can see, as we look at this map, there are potentially more to come. So do we have any idea what the net change could be for the House of Representatives next year? I mean, how many seats are being pursued by each side? And frankly, are Republicans coming out ahead, at least right now?
Yeah, Alex, I think the top line takeaway is that Republicans are liable to come out ahead, at least in the short term. So as you mentioned, we've already seen 3 states gerrymander. Texas, Republicans are likely going to pick up 5 seats, Missouri 1 seat, and as you mentioned, North Carolina another. So that's 7 seats that they're likely to pick up so far. As far as Democrats are concerned, they're pursuing 5 extra seats in California, and also starting on Monday, Virginia is going to pursue a gerrymander that could give them an extra 2 or 3 seats for Democrats. That would leave the two parties at about equal if that all went according to plan. But there is every expectation that Republicans are going to move forward in other Republican-controlled states like Florida, for example, Kansas, Indiana, Ohio. And so at the end of all of this, it's quite likely that Republicans could pick up another between 8 and 11 congressional seats, depending on how aggressively they go after these gerrymanders. I mean, there are big open questions about how far they could go in places like Florida, whether state legislators, Republican state legislators, are up to gerrymandering in a state like Indiana. Now, that's in the short term, because in the short term, a lot of democratically controlled states are hamstrung by laws that prevent partisan gerrymandering. But over the next, 2 years or so, these states could make constitutional amendments that would allow further democratic gerrymandering in places like Colorado, for example, or New York State. In addition to what I mentioned, Democrats might be able to pick up a seat or 2 each in Illinois or Maryland, but it's worth saying that Illinois and Maryland are both already quite gerrymandered in favor of Democrats.
You know your map, my friend. So here's one caveat, though. History shows in the Trump era, when he isn't on the ballot, Republicans tend to see a drop in support. So the question is, could these changes offset this obstacle for the GOP?
Yeah. Where things stand right now, I don't think this fundamentally changes the math for the 2026 midterms. Democrats only need to flip 3 seats in the House before all of this gerrymandering is done. If Republicans net, say, 5 more seats as a result, that would still put that number that Democrats need to flip around 8 or so districts well below the number that the out party usually picks up in a midterm environment like this. On top of voters not turning out as much sort of for Republicans when Trump isn't on the ballot, I mean, there's a lot of animus towards Donald Trump today, and that's really motivating Democratic voters to turn out at much higher numbers. So it's not just depressed turnout potentially on the Republican side, but it's really amped up turnout on the Democratic side. And so Republicans, are trying to change the structure of elections to advantage themselves. But the question is, will they be able to do it to a degree that can overcome popular sentiment? I would say in the short term, it's unlikely, but it would be quite significant if they were able to, gerrymander enough seats that they could sort of prevent public opinion from actually determining the results of the midterms. So
let me take this a step further with this question. How confident is each party in their ability to win the newly redrawn districts? I mean, what are the chances that some could backfire?
Yeah, and we call this in the elections nerd community a dummy mander, where you get so greedy that you end up making the districts that you're hoping to pick up relatively competitive in a, say, blue wave or red wave environment. So is there a chance that some of the districts that, for example, Republicans drew in Texas are more competitive than they intended? And maybe, if we see a swing to the left amongst Hispanic voters, that they might not pick up all 5? That's certainly a possibility. possibility. I would direct our attention to Utah when it comes to this question. Because of Utah's laws, the state legislature is supposed to have more bipartisan or independent considerations in drawing congressional districts. The state legislature there redrew the map that is currently, strongly favors Republicans into 4 seats, all of which favor Republicans, but 2 of which are pretty competitive. And so in that case, they could actually see a situation where instead of going from 3, instead of sort of gerrymandering themselves into a position to win all 4, say Democrats have the opportunity to pick up 2 in a strong midterm environment. So a dummy mander is certainly a possibility, but I should say in a case like that, in a blue wave environment where a dummy mander could become a factor, Democrats were probably going to win the House anyway.
You are impressive with all this knowledge. I appreciate you sharing it with us. So we'll see you again, Galen. Thank you so much.